The old St. Elizabeth Hospital needs to come down. That seems to be the consensus from Hannibal city leaders as well as residents. At a public meeting last night, one resident shared memories he and his family have at the former hospital, but agree it should be torn down. Another resident says his son works at the Hannibal Police Department and worries about the mold and asbestos they are inhaling when they do safety checks. Some are worried that it's only a matter of when, not if, the building collapses and potentially kills someone.
However we got here is now Hannibal's problem. And because it's Hannibal's problem, it's your problem. Right there. You make the decisions for us. You have to find the solution.
My take is pretty much 100% of this room agrees that it has to come down and that we need to find the correct way to do it without harming other city entities, which I would not let that happen anyway.
City leaders tallied up for a vote for all the residents who came to the meeting. Mayor Louderman assured everyone that last night is far from their final decision. They plan to hold another public meeting in the near future. Demolition of the building now is estimated to cost nearly $5 million.